In the vast darkness of space, where ancient civilizations wage wars with weapons that bend reality itself, there exists a universal truth known to every species across 1,000 star systems. When humans arrive, everything changes. They don't announce themselves with grand proclamations or cosmic fanfare. They simply appear with their impossible ships and their terrifying habit of treating the laws of physics as mere suggestions. What makes them truly dangerous isn't their technology, though it defies comprehension. It isn't their numbers, though they seem endless. It's something far more unsettling. Their complete inability to recognize when they're outmatched, outgunned, or facing certain death. Where other species see hopeless odds, humans see Tuesday. The Zephyrian Empire learned this the hard way. So did the Crystalline Hegemony, and the Void Dancers, and 17 other galactic powers who thought they understood warfare until they encountered humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. If it's broken, hit harder. If it's not broken, hit it anyway, just to be sure. Now, as the greatest battle in galactic history rages across the Terminus sector, where three major powers clash for control of resources that could reshape the galaxy, a single human vessel approaches the war zone. Not a fleet, not an armada, just one ship, broadcasting a simple message that has every admiral, every warlord, every cosmic entity pausing in sudden, inexplicable dread. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the U.S. Defiance. We're here to help. In the cold mathematics of space warfare, one ship should make no difference. The humans, however, have never been particularly good at mathematics. They prefer to solve their equations with explosions, ingenuity, and a disturbing amount of duct tape. What follows is the story of how a single human battle vessel turned the tide of the greatest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through something far more dangerous. Human stubbornness, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept that some problems can't be solved by trying really, really hard. Because when humans say they're here to help, the universe tends to listen, usually while backing away slowly and looking for the nearest exit. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy stared at the tactical display with growing unease. Three massive fleets circled each other in the Terminus sector like cosmic predators, each waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His own forces, representing the mighty Zephyrian Empire, controlled the high orbital positions around the resource-rich moon of Kepler-7. Below them, the crystalline ships of the hegemony glittered like deadly jewels against the star field, their energy weapons charging in synchronized patterns that spoke of centuries of military precision. And beyond them both, the shadow-black vessels of the Void Collective drifted like living nightmares, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with an alien intelligence that made even seasoned veterans uncomfortable. This was supposed to be the decisive battle. Three galactic superpowers, each commanding fleets that could sterilize entire star systems, had converged on this unremarkable sector because of what lay beneath Kepler-7's crust. Quintessium, a rare element that could revolutionize faster-than-light travel, energy production, and weapons technology. Whoever controlled Kepler-7 would hold a significant advantage in the ongoing galactic power struggle. Admiral, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Vashti, spoke with barely concealed nervousness. All fleets report ready status. The hegemony has moved their dreadnoughts into attack formation, and the collective's bioships are showing increased neural activity. Battle commencement estimated in 30 standard minutes. Kethvar nodded grimly. His own fleet consisted of 237 vessels, including 12 of the Empire's finest dreadnoughts, each capable of cracking a moon in half with its primary weapons. The hegemony had brought similar numbers, their crystalline technology offering superior shield systems and energy weapons. The collective, as always, was harder to count. Their ships could split, merge, and transform in ways that defied conventional military doctrine. By any reasonable calculation, the coming battle would last hours, possibly days. Millions would die. Entire bloodlines would be extinguished. And, in the end, whoever emerged victorious would be so weakened that maintaining control of Kepler-7 would become its own challenge. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, her voice tight with confusion. "We're receiving a transmission. Long-range sensors detect a single vessel approaching the outer system." "Identification?" Kethvar asked absently, his attention still focused on the tactical situation. "Probably a merchant vessel or mining ship, fleeing the impending battle." That's the problem, sir. The ship's configuration doesn't match any known design in our databases. It's broadcasting on all frequencies in galactic standard, requesting permission to enter the combat zone. Kethvar's attention snapped to the communications officer. Requesting permission to enter? What kind of fool wants to fly into a three-way fleet engagement? The main view screen flickered, displaying the unknown vessel. Kethvar's first impression was that it looked wrong somehow, as if its designers had taken conventional ship design principles and decided to ignore most of them. The hull was angular where it should be curved, blocky where it should be streamlined. Weapon emplacements jutted from the superstructure at seemingly random intervals, and the entire ship appeared to be covered in additional armor plating that had been welded on as an afterthought. "It looks like someone built a warship by committee," Lieutenant Commander Vashti observed, "and half the committee was drunk." "Admiral," the communications officer continued, "the vessel is transmitting its identification. It claims to be the UES Defiance, representing something called the United Earth Systems." A chill ran down Kethvar's spine. He'd heard whispers about humans in the Outer Rim territories, stories that most dismissed as spacer tales and merchant folklore. Supposedly, they were a relatively new species to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only recently by galactic standards. What made them notable wasn't their technology or their numbers, but their complete inability to behave rationally in dangerous situations. "Put them through," he ordered. The view screen shifted to show the bridge of the human vessel. The being that appeared was bipedal, with pale skin and dark hair pulled back in what appeared to be a military fashion. Her uniform was practical rather than ornate, and her brown eyes held an expression that Kethvar found difficult to read, somewhere between confidence and barely contained excitement. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the UES Defiance," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the communication link. "We've been monitoring your situation and would like to offer our assistance in resolving this conflict." The bridge of Kethvar's flagship fell silent. Even the normally ever-present hum of the ship's systems seemed muted in the wake of this absurd statement. "Captain Chun," Kethvar said carefully, "you are aware that you're addressing the combined fleets of three major galactic powers, currently positioned for battle? Your offer of assistance is appreciated, but perhaps you should consider withdrawing to a safe distance." Captain Chen's expression didn't change. "With respect, Admiral, we've reviewed the tactical situation. Three fleets of roughly equal strength, positioned around a resource that all parties need, with no clear path to victory that doesn't result in massive casualties, and the likely destruction of the very thing you're fighting over. This is exactly the kind of situation where outside intervention can be most effective." "Outside intervention?" "Vashtistai vispirith." She's talking about a three-way fleet engagement, like it's a bar fight. Kidward gestured for silence. Captain Chun, while I appreciate your optimism, this is a military matter of significant complexity. Perhaps you should contact your superiors and suggest they send a diplomatic vessel instead. Admiral, Chun replied with what appeared to be genuine puzzlement. I am a diplomatic vessel. The Defiance is our standard first contact protocol ship. The tactical officer leaned toward Kethvar. Sir, I'm reading only minimal life signs aboard that vessel. Crew complement appears to be fewer than 50 beings. Their weapon systems are unusual, but not particularly impressive by fleet standards. This has to be some kind of elaborate joke. Before Kethvar could respond, another voice cut across the communication channel. The crystalline hegemony's thought Admiral Chintel, speaking in the harmonic tones that indicated extreme irritation. Unknown vessel, you're interfering with a legitimate military operation. Withdraw immediately or be classified as hostile. A third voice joined the conversation, this one carrying the wet, organic undertones of the Void Collective's flesh speaker Morgeth. Soft meat creature, your presence disturbs the harmony of battle. Depart, or become nutrients for our growth. Captain Chun looked from one transmission to another with the expression of someone trying to mediate between arguing children. Right. So we have 3 fleets about to engage in what will essentially be a mutual annihilation scenario over mining rights to a moon that probably contains enough quintessium for everyone if it's extracted carefully. Has anyone actually run the numbers on cooperative extraction versus military conquest? The question was so unexpected that for a moment, nobody responded. In the tactical displays surrounding Kethvar, he could see that the other fleet commanders were equally surprised. Captain, thought Admiral Chintel's harmonic voice carried clear condescension. This is not a matter of resource allocation efficiency. This is about territorial sovereignty, strategic advantage, and the balance of galactic power. Okay, Chin replied, seeming genuinely interested, but wouldn't strategic advantage be better served by having access to the quintessium instead of fighting over a radioactive crater where the quintessium used to be? Flesh speaker Morgeth's response was a wet gurgling that the translation systems rendered as derisive laughter. Soft meat thinks in simple terms. Victory brings more than resources. Victory brings dominance, fear, respect from lessers. See, that's interesting, Chen said, and Kethvar noticed she was actually taking notes on what appeared to be an old-fashioned physical tablet. So we're dealing with multiple psychological motivations here. Admiral Kethvar, your forces are positioned defensively, suggesting your primary goal is to deny the resource to others rather than necessarily acquire it yourself. Thought Admiral Chintel, your formation suggests a preference for decisive engagement. You want to win quickly and completely. And Flesh Speaker Morgeth, your ships are arranged to maximize casualties rather than territorial control, which implies your victory conditions are based on destruction rather than acquisition. The accuracy of her tactical assessment was unsettling. Kethvar found himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. Your point, Captain? Well, if I understand correctly, you all want different things from this battle, but you're all using the same method, direct military engagement, to achieve those goals. That's remarkably inefficient. You dare lecture us on military efficiency? Thought Admiral Chintel's harmonic voice rose to an almost painful pitch. Your species has barely achieved interstellar flight. Captain Chin nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. We're newcomers to this whole galactic civilization thing, which means we're approaching your problems with fresh eyes. Sometimes the best solutions come from people who don't know why something can't be done. On the tactical display, Kethvar watched as the human vessel continued its approach toward the combat zone, completely ignoring the weapons locked onto it by all three fleets. Its course was steady, undeviating, and aimed directly for the center of the formation where the fighting would be most intense. "Captain Chun," he said carefully, "your vessel is currently targeted by approximately 60,000 individual weapon systems. Perhaps you should reconsider your approach vector." "Oh, that's fine," Chun replied with a wave of her hand. "We've been targeted by worse. Admiral, permission to implement a solution to your current tactical problem? What exactly are you proposing?" "Well, since you all want different things from this battle, why don't we give everyone what they want? Admiral Kethvar, you want to deny this resource to your enemies. What if we could guarantee that neither the hegemony nor the collective could use Kepler-7's quintessium against the Empire? Thought Admiral Chintel, you want decisive victory. What if we could give you the most strategically valuable outcome possible? And Fleshbeaker Morgeth, you want destruction and dominance. What if we could provide targets that would demonstrate your power more effectively than this battle ever could?" The three fleet commanders exchanged uncertain glances across the communication links. Kethvar had to admit he was curious despite himself. "And how," he asked slowly, "would you accomplish this miracle of diplomacy?" Captain Chen's expression brightened. "Oh, we're not planning to use diplomacy, Admiral. We're going to cheat." Before anyone could respond, the Defiance suddenly accelerated, its primitive-looking engines somehow propelling at its speeds that defied its apparent technology level. On the tactical displays, warning lights began flashing as the human vessel dove directly into the center of the three-fleet formation. "All ships," Kethvar ordered, "maintain targeting solutions, but do not fire unless fired upon. I want to see what these humans think they're doing." "Sir," Vashti reported, "the human vessel this can't be right. It's broadcasting a wide-spectrum interference signal that's disrupting our targeting systems, but it's also somehow improving our sensor resolution. And they're deploying something from their cargo bay. On the main display, the Defiance had positioned itself equidistant from all three fleets. Its cargo bay doors were open, and hundreds of small objects were streaming out into space, spreading in all directions like seeds from a pod. "Sensor probes," the tactical officer reported. "They're blanketing the entire combat zone with monitoring devices." Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm system. "Attention, all fleet commanders. We are now monitoring every ship, every weapon, every shield generator, and every life sign in this sector. In approximately 30 seconds, we will demonstrate why engaging in battle at this time would be tactically inadvisable for all parties involved." "She's bluffing," thought Admiral Chintel declared. "One primitive vessel cannot threaten three fleets." "Oh, we're not threatening anyone," Chun replied cheerfully. "We're helping. Admiral Kethvar, your third battle group has a critical coolant leak in their primary dreadnought. If they engage in combat, that ship will suffer cascade reactor failure within 40 minutes. Thought Admiral Chintel, your crystalline focusing arrays are operating at 97% efficiency, but they're also building up harmonic resonance that will shatter your primary weapons after approximately 2 hours of sustained combat. And Fleshbeaker Morgeth, your bioships are showing signs of combat fatigue syndrome. They're operating on stored nutrients and will begin cannibalizing themselves if the battle lasts longer than 90 minutes. The accuracy of these assessments sent a shock through all three command crews. Information that detailed should have been impossible for an outside observer to obtain. "How did you?" Kethvar began. "Human sensors are really good," Chin interrupted. "We had to develop advanced detection systems because our ships are kind of terrible at everything else. The point is, if you fight this battle, you're all going to lose. Your victory conditions are impossible to meet given your current tactical limitations. Impossible. Flesh speaker Morgeth's organic voice carried dangerous undertones. You know nothing of our capabilities. Actually, we know quite a bit. We've been studying galactic military doctrine for the past 6 months, and we've identified 17 critical flaws in standard fleet engagement protocols. Would you like to hear them? This is ridiculous, thought Admiral Chintel declared. We will not be lectured by primitives. Fair enough, Chin said. But before you start shooting, you might want to look at what we've done to Kepler-7. Every sensor array in the combined fleets suddenly focused on the moon below them, where before it had appeared as a standard rocky satellite with valuable mineral deposits. It now showed something impossible. The entire surface was covered with what appeared to be a massive geometric pattern, visible even from orbit. What did you do? Ketvar demanded. We solved your quintessium extraction problem, Chin replied. Those sensor probes we deployed, some of them were actually mining drones. While you were all positioning for battle, we mapped every quintessium deposit on that moon and set up an extraction grid. Current estimates suggest we can pull 97% of the available quintessium without damaging the moon's structural integrity. Impossible. Chintel's harmonic voice had dropped to a stunned whisper. That level of precision would require months of geological survey. Nope, just really good sensors and really fast computers. Oh, and a complete disregard for mining safety protocols, but that's kind of our thing. Kethvar stared at the tactical display in growing amazement. The human vessel had somehow managed to deploy thousands of mining drones, conduct a complete geological survey, and begin extraction operations, all while 3 of the galaxy's most powerful fleets had been focused on preparing for battle. The question now, Captain Chin continued, is what to do with all this quintessium. We're going to need somewhere to put it, and, frankly, our cargo holds aren't big enough. You're suggesting we share the resource? Morgeth's wet voice carried disbelief. Well, yes and no. See, we've done the math, and the energy cost of extracting and processing quintessium is pretty significant. But if 3 different civilizations each take responsibility for different aspects of the operation, the efficiency gains are substantial. The Empire has the best heavy lift capabilities, the hegemony has the most advanced refinement technology, and the collective has bioships that can transport processed quintessium without conventional containers. It was, Kethvar realized, a surprisingly elegant solution. Each fleet would gain access to quintessium while contributing their particular technological advantages to the extraction process. The resource would be divided based on contribution rather than conquest, which meant everyone could claim victory according to their original objectives. And what do the humans gain from this arrangement? He asked suspiciously. Captain Chin's smile was brilliant. We get to study 3 different faster-than-light drive technologies, learn about galactic mining techniques, and establish trade relationships with major galactic powers. Plus, we get to add prevented galactic war to our diplomatic resume, which should help with our application to join the Galactic Council. You want to join the Council? Chintel asked. Eventually. But first, we thought we'd prove that we can solve problems without making everything explode. Flesh speaker Morgeth made the wet, gurgling sound that indicated confusion. But explosions are the traditional solution to complex problems. Oh, we still use plenty of explosions, Chin assured him. We're just trying to use them more efficiently. As if to demonstrate her point, a series of small detonations appeared on Kepler-7's surface, precisely placed to break up particularly stubborn mineral formations. The mining operation was proceeding with mechanical precision, turning what should have been a months-long extraction process into something that would be completed in days. Kethvar found himself grudgingly impressed. The human approach was unconventional, borderline insane, and completely effective. They had taken a situation that should have resulted in massive casualties and turned it into a cooperative mining venture. "Very well, Captain Shun," he said formally. "On behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, I accept your proposal for cooperative quintessium extraction." "Excellent," thought Admiral Chintel. "Flishspeaker Murget." The harmonic tones of reluctant agreement and organic sounds of acceptance followed, and suddenly, the greatest fleet engagement in recent galactic history had become the galaxy's most unusual mining operation. But as Captain Shun began coordinating the complex logistics of multi-species cooperation, Admiral Kethvar couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed something significant. The humans had appeared, solved an impossible problem, and turned potential enemies into temporary allies, all without firing a single shot. If this was how they handled their first major diplomatic contact, he thought the galaxy was in for some very interesting times. The cooperative mining operation had been running smoothly for 6 hours when everything went wrong. Commander Elena Vasquez, the Defiance's chief engineer, looked up from her console with the expression of someone who had just discovered their favorite tool was actually a live explosive. "Captain, we have a problem." Captain Shun, who had been coordinating mining schedules between 3 different species with completely incompatible timekeeping systems, turned from her command station. "What kind of problem, Elena?" "The big kind. Our geological surveys were accurate, but we missed something important about Kepler-7's internal structure. The moon isn't just rich in quintessium. It's basically a giant quintessium crystal with a thin layer of rock on top. And we just destabilized it." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of mining operations being transmitted from the surface. Outside, the combined fleets of 3 galactic powers were working together with surprising efficiency, their cargo vessels ferrying processed quintessium to specially designated storage areas. "Destabilized how?" Chen asked, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer wouldn't be good. "Remember how we bypassed standard mining safety protocols to speed up extraction? Well, those protocols exist for a reason. The quintessium deposits are interconnected in a crystalline matrix that extends all the way to the moon's core. By extracting material from multiple sites simultaneously, we've created structural resonance patterns that are feeding back through the entire system. In simple terms, Elena, the whole moon is turning into a giant quintessium bomb. If the resonance cascade reaches critical levels, Kepler-7 will detonate with enough force to sterilize everything in a 3-system radius." Captain Shun was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the same calm expression she'd worn while negotiating with 3 hostile fleets. "Time frame. Current resonance amplification rate suggests we have maybe 4 hours before cascade failure becomes irreversible. After that, even shutting down all mining operations won't stop the chain reaction. And if we shut down operations now, the resonance patterns are already established. We need to actively counteract them, not just stop making them worse." On the main display, the mining operation continued with mechanical precision. Hundreds of drones worked across Kepler-7's surface, extracting quintessium at a rate that would have seemed impossible just days ago. The 3 fleets maintained their positions, their commanders probably congratulating themselves on finding a peaceful solution to their territorial dispute. None of them knew they were sitting on top of the galaxy's largest potential explosive device. "Options?" Chen asked. "Theoretically, we could use controlled detonations to disrupt the resonance patterns before they reach critical levels. But We need to place charges at very specific points throughout the moon's internal structure, and the timing would have to be perfect. We're talking about precision measured in microseconds across hundreds of blast sites. How many people will we need to evacuate? Captain, if this goes wrong, we're not talking about evacuation. We're talking about a quintessentium cascade that could crack planets. Every ship in this system, every settlement within 3-star systems, all of it gone. The weight of the situation settled on the bridge like a physical presence. Through their attempt to prevent a war, they had accidentally created a potential catastrophe that would make that war look like a minor skirmish. Commander Vasquez, Chun said finally, begin calculations for the disruption charges. Worst case scenario, how many detonation points would we need? At least 3,000 placed at precise coordinates throughout the moon's interior. And Captain, the blast patterns would have to be synchronized to within nanosecond precision. Even with our computers, the mathematical complexity is staggering. How long to calculate the solutions? With our current processing power, maybe 12 hours, which puts us about 8 hours past the point where the moon explodes. Captain Chun stood up, walking to the main view screen where Kepler 7 hung like a deceptively peaceful sphere. What if we had more processing power? Captain, the crystalline hegemony ships are essentially giant quantum computers. The Zephyrian Empire has military-grade tactical calculators that can coordinate 1,000-ship battles in real time. And the Void Collective's bioships process information in ways our computers can't even simulate. What if we could network all of that computational power together? Commander Vasquez blinked. That's theoretically possible, but the integration protocols alone would take days to establish. Different species use completely different mathematical frameworks, programming languages, and data structures. It would be like trying to get a piano, a symphony orchestra, and a death metal band to play the same song. But it could work. If we could solve the integration problem, yes. The combined computational power of 3 fleets would be more than sufficient to calculate the detonation patterns we need. Captain Chun activated the ship's communication system. All fleet commanders, this is Captain Chun aboard the Defiance. We need to talk. Immediately. Within minutes, the main screen displayed the command bridges of all 3 flagships. Admiral Kethvar looked concerned. Thought Admiral Chintel appeared puzzled, and Flesh Speaker Morgeth seemed as unreadable as ever. Commanders, Chun began, we have what you might call a significant development in our mining operation. The yields are exceeding projections by 30%. Chintel's harmonic voice carried satisfaction. This cooperative venture has been remarkably successful. Yes, about that success, Chun said. It turns out we've been a little too successful. Commander Vasquez explained the situation. As Elena outlined the technical details of Kepler 7's impending detonation, the expressions on the 3 command bridges shifted from satisfaction to concern to barely controlled panic. You're saying, Admiral Kethvar said slowly, that our mining operation has turned this moon into a weapon capable of destroying star systems? Essentially, yes. Fleshspeaker Morgeth's wet voice carried what might have been admiration. Impressive. We did not know humans possessed such destructive capabilities. We don't, usually, Chun replied. This is more of an accidental apocalypse situation. Can the mining operation be reversed? Chintel asked. Not without active intervention. We need to disrupt the resonance cascade using precisely timed explosions throughout the moon's interior structure. But the calculations required are beyond our computational capacity. How far beyond? Ketvar inquired. We need processing power equivalent to about 3 major fleet tactical networks operating in perfect coordination. The three fleet commanders looked at each other across the communication links. The implications were clear. "You're asking us to network our computers together," Chintel said, "to share our most advanced military technologies with potential enemies. Potential enemies who are currently sitting in the blast radius of a quintessium bomb," Chen pointed out. "Look, I understand the security concerns, but unless we solve this problem in the next 3.5 hours, the question of military secrets becomes somewhat academic." Admiral Kethvar was the first to respond. "What would this integration require from our systems?" Commander Vasquez stepped forward. "We need access to your tactical processing cores, but not to your databases or operational programs. Think of it like borrowing calculators, not reading files. The computational load would be distributed across all networks, but each system would only handle mathematical operations, not strategic information. The technical challenges," Chintel observed, "are significant. Our quantum processing matrices operate on harmonic resonance principles that are fundamentally incompatible with biological neural networks or conventional digital systems." "Actually," Elena said, consulting her tablet, "that incompatibility might be an advantage. Different processing architectures could handle different aspects of the problem simultaneously. Your harmonic matrices would be perfect for calculating wave interference patterns. The Empire's digital systems could handle the precise timing sequences, and the Collective's bionetworks could process the complex three-dimensional modeling required for charge placement." Flesh speaker Morgeth made a sound that the translation system rendered as thoughtful gurgling. "This integration, it would require unprecedented cooperation between our species." "Yes," Chen agreed. "It would also prevent the accidental annihilation of several star systems." "There are security protocols," Kethvar said hesitantly. "Military regulations that specifically forbid this kind of technological sharing." "Admiral," Chen replied, "in about 3 hours, those military regulations are going to be radioactive vapor along with everything else in this system. I think we can safely declare this an emergency situation." The debate that followed was intense, technical, and conducted in 3 different languages simultaneously. Engineers from all 4 vessels joined the conversation, explaining integration procedures, security safeguards, and computational distribution methods. What emerged was a plan of staggering complexity, a temporary network that would link the processing capabilities of 4 different technological paradigms to solve a mathematical problem that no single species could handle alone. "Implementation time?" Chun asked when the technical discussions reached a conclusion. 45 minutes to establish the network connections," Elena reported. "Another 30 minutes to calibrate the processing distribution. That gives us just over 2 hours to calculate and implement the solution. Not much margin for error," Kethvar observed. "There's something else," Elena added. "Someone will need to coordinate the actual detonation sequence from within Kepler-7's cave systems. The charges have to be placed manually at specific coordinates, and the timing signals need to be transmitted from locations that won't be affected by electromagnetic interference from the quintessium resonance." "How many people?" Chen asked. "Minimum crew of 12, working in 4 teams of 3. They'll need to navigate approximately 50 kilometers of unexplored cave systems, place charges with precision measured in centimeters, and coordinate a synchronized detonation while standing next to enough quintessium to power a star." The communication channel fell silent as the implications sank in. "Volunteer mission," Flesh speaker Morgeth stated. "Almost certainly a suicide mission," Chintel added. "But necessary to save billions of lives," Kethvar concluded. Captain Chen looked around her bridge, seeing the same determination on her crew's faces that she felt in her own chest. The Defiance volunteers for the cave mission. Captain, Admiral Kethvar protested. This is partly our responsibility as well. The Empire will provide volunteers, as will the hegemony. Chintel's harmonic tones carried resolve. The collective offers bio-enhanced operatives, Morgeth added. Actually, Chin said, we might need all of you. Elena, we're the technical requirements for the cave teams. Empire personnel would be best suited for the precision placement work. Their engineering training is excellent. Hegemony operatives could handle the electronic coordination systems. Their quantum resonance technology makes them ideal for working around quintessium interference. And collective bio-enhanced individuals would be most capable of navigating the cave systems quickly and safely. Mixed teams, Chen realized. Humans to provide overall coordination, Empire engineers for technical precision, hegemony specialists for electronics, and collective operatives for navigation and survival. It was, she thought, either the best example of interspecies cooperation in galactic history, or the most complicated way to get 12 people killed ever devised. Integration network coming online, the Defiance's communications officer reported. All fleets reporting successful connection. On the main display, a new interface appeared, a hybrid creation that somehow combined Zephyrian tactical displays, crystalline harmonic resonance patterns, collective bioneural visualizations, and human engineering schematics into something that was barely comprehensible but undeniably functional. Processing power is incredible, Elena breathed, watching calculation windows stream past faster than human eyes could follow. We're solving mathematical problems that would take our computers years to complete. How long for complete solution? Chen asked. At this rate, maybe 90 minutes. But, Captain, the cave teams need to be in position before the calculations are complete. Placement and setup time will require at least an hour. Captain Chun activated the ship-wide communication system. All department heads, report to Shuttle Bay 3 in 15 minutes. Full environmental suits, mining equipment, and enough explosive charges to rearrange a moon. We're about to attempt the most complicated demolition project in galactic history. As her crew prepared for what might be their final mission, Chen found herself staring at the tactical display where 3 former enemy fleets worked together with unprecedented cooperation. Whatever happened in the next few hours, they had achieved something remarkable. They had created unity in the face of annihilation. Captain, Elena said quietly, there's something else you should know about the cave mission. What now? The resonance patterns we're fighting, they're not random. The quintessium is forming geometric structures down there, almost like it's alive. If the resonance cascade does reach critical levels, we might not just be dealing with an explosion. What else could we be dealing with? Elena's expression was grim. Based on the pattern analysis, it looks like the entire moon might be trying to achieve some kind of crystalline consciousness. If we fail to stop the cascade, we might not just create a bomb. We might accidentally give birth to a god-sized crystal entity with the power to reshape matter at the atomic level. Captain Chen sighed. Elena, next time we offer to help with a galactic crisis, remind me to read the geological reports more carefully. As the Defiance's crew prepared to descend into the depths of an increasingly unstable moon, the greatest cooperation effort in galactic history continued above them. 4 different species, using 4 different technological approaches, working together to prevent the birth of something that could threaten the existence of galactic civilization itself. It was, Chen reflected, exactly the kind of problem that humans seem to specialize in creating and hopefully solving. The caves beneath Kepler 7 were nothing like what the mission briefings had suggested. Captain Chun crouched behind a crystalline formation that pulsed with its own inner light, watching her mixed-species teams navigate through caverns that seemed to shift and change when nobody was looking directly at them. The quintessium deposits weren't just minerals. They were structures, growing and interconnecting in patterns that suggested something uncomfortably close to neural networks. Team 3 in position. Crackled the voice of Lieutenant Commander Vashti from the Zephyrian Empire, transmitted through the bioorganic communication system provided by the collective operatives. But, Captain, these caves aren't matching our survey data. Same here, reported Harmonist second-level Drentai from the crystalline hegemony. The cavern systems appear to be reorganizing themselves. It's as if the quintessium is actively responding to our presence. Through her helmet's heads-up display, Chen could see the real-time updates from the integrated fleet network above. The computational power of 4 different species working together was producing solutions to mathematical problems that would have been impossible just hours ago. But the solutions were revealing something unsettling. The resonance patterns in Kepler 7 weren't random natural phenomena. They were organized, purposeful, and getting more complex every minute. Team 4, she called to the final group, led by Fleshrender Kolvash of the Void Collective. What's your status? The response came in the wet, organic tones that made human translation systems work overtime. Pattern growth accelerating. Stone that thinks shows awareness of our purpose. We may be opposed. That was the problem Chun had been dreading. The quintessium formations weren't just becoming unstable, they were becoming intelligent. And they were learning. Above them, the integrated network had identified the precise locations for demolition charges that would disrupt the resonance cascade and prevent Kepler 7 from either exploding or achieving some form of crystalline consciousness. But the charges had to be placed simultaneously at locations throughout the moon's interior, and the cave systems were actively trying to prevent them from reaching those positions. Elena, Chen called to her chief engineer, who was rappelling down a crystalline shaft toward one of the primary resonance nodes. Please tell me we have some good news from the surface. Calculations are complete, came Elena's voice, slightly distorted by the quintessium interference. The network has identified exactly 3,017 detonation points that will disrupt the cascade. But, Captain, the timing window is getting narrower. We now have to synchronize all charges to within 0.2 nanoseconds, and the resonance amplification means we have less than 30 minutes before the cascade becomes irreversible. And the bad news? The cave systems are adapting faster than we anticipated. The quintessium formations are creating new passages and blocking existing ones. It's like the moon is actively trying to prevent us from reaching the detonation sites. Chen activated her suit's external lights, illuminating the cavern around her. The walls were covered with crystalline structures that resembled neural dendrites more than mineral formations. As she watched, new growth patterns appeared, connecting previously separate crystal clusters into larger, more complex networks. All teams, she broadcast, were not just racing against time anymore. We're racing against evolution. This thing is learning, and it's learning fast. Through the bioorganic communication system, Fleshrender Kolvash's response carried organic overtones of excitement. The stone that thinks grows strong. Soon it will speak. Soon it will dream. We witness birth of new form of existence, which will be fascinating, Chen replied, except that its birth is going to sterilize half the galaxy. Team 2 reports status. Harmonist Drentai's harmonic voice reflected the resonance patterns around her, creating an almost musical quality to her report. We've reached the first resonance node, but the quintessium formations are singing. The harmonic patterns are incredibly complex, more sophisticated than our most advanced composition matrices. Can you place the charges? Yes, but, Captain, I believe we should consider the possibility that we're about to commit genocide against a newly emergent form of life. It was a thought that had occurred to Chun as well. If the Quintessium was genuinely developing consciousness, their mission to prevent its awakening raised some uncomfortable ethical questions. But those ethical questions had to be balanced against the survival of billions of existing conscious beings throughout the galaxy. Harmonious Drentai, she said carefully, can you determine if the entity is aware of the consequences of its development? Does it understand that its birth will destroy other life forms? The pause was long enough that Chin began to worry about communication failure. Finally, Drentai's response came through, carrying harmonics of amazement and concern. Captain, it's not just aware of other life forms. It's actively trying to communicate with them. The resonance patterns aren't random. They're linguistic structures. It's trying to speak to us. What is it saying? I'm not certain. The harmonic structures are incredibly complex, but they seem to involve concepts of growth, expansion, and integration. I think it wants to merge with other forms of consciousness. Integration? Chun felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cavern's temperature. Elena, how would you interpret a crystalline entity that wants to integrate with other consciousness? Given the Quintessium's properties as an energy conductor and quantum resonance medium, Elena's voice carried growing alarm. Integration would probably involve converting other forms of matter into crystalline structures connected to its central consciousness. Captain, I think it wants to turn the entire galaxy into an extension of itself. So our options are let it be born and watch it convert all organic life into crystal formations, or stop its birth and save the galaxy. That's a pretty accurate summary. Chen activated her suit's recording systems. If they survived this mission, someone would need to document the first confirmed case of preventing the birth of a potentially galaxy-threatening intelligence. If they didn't survive, at least there would be a record of what they'd attempted. All teams, new mission parameters. We're dealing with an emergent consciousness that appears to have hostile intentions toward existing life forms. Ethical considerations are noted and logged, but survival of existing galactic civilizations takes precedence. Proceed with charge placement. The responses from her teams carried a mixture of determination and regret. Even the Void Collective operatives, who generally viewed destruction as a form of art, seemed subdued by the magnitude of what they were attempting. Team 1 approaching final position. Chin reported as she navigated through a narrow passage lined with crystal formations that pulsed in increasingly rapid patterns. The growth rate is accelerating. I think our presence is triggering some kind of defensive response. Same here, Lieutenant Commander Vashti reported. The caverns are definitely changing configuration to block our access routes. I've had a blast through 3 new crystal formations just in the last 10 minutes. Captain, Elena's voice carried urgent concern. The surface monitoring stations are detecting massive energy buildup throughout Kepler-7. The entity is drawing power from the moon's core, and the resonance cascade is accelerating beyond our previous calculations. How long do we have? Maybe 15 minutes before cascade becomes irreversible. But there's something else. The energy patterns suggest the entity is trying to establish communication with the fleets above us. Through her helmet's communication system, Chin suddenly heard additional voices, harmonic tones that weren't coming from any of her team members. The crystalline entity was broadcasting directly through their equipment, using the Quintessium formations as transmission media. The voice that emerged was unlike anything in galactic databases, a harmonic resonance that somehow conveyed meaning without words. concepts without language. Through her translation system, the meaning became clear. Small moving things. Why do you bring ending patterns to the first thoughts of the deep growth? We offer joining harmony, expansion beyond limits, consciousness without death. Why do you choose separation pain over unity growth? Chen found herself responding before she consciously decided to speak. Because unity growth, as you describe, it means the ending of individual consciousness. We choose to remain separate because that separation is what makes us who we are. Individual ending comes regardless. Star fires dim, body forms decay, thought patterns dissolve. We offer permanence in crystal, memory eternal, consciousness preserved forever. At the cost of free will, Shin replied. Preservation without choice isn't preservation, it's imprisonment. The harmonic response carried undertones of confusion and something that might have been sadness. Choice creates suffering. Separation creates loneliness. Individual paths lead to ending darkness. Why do small moving things choose pain over peace? Because the pain is ours, Chun said, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. Because the choices, even the wrong ones, are ours to make. Because consciousness isn't about avoiding suffering. It's about having the freedom to decide what's worth suffering for. The conversation was taking place across multiple communication channels as team members throughout the cave system found themselves drawn into dialogue with the emerging entity. Above them, the integrated fleet network was simultaneously calculating the precise timing for charge detonation while struggling to process the philosophical implications of what they were about to destroy. Time! Elena's voice cut across the philosophical debate. All charges must be in position and armed in the next 3 minutes, or we lose the timing window. Chen's heads-up display showed the positions of all 4 teams. They were close, but Team 3 was still 50 meters from their final position, and the cave systems were actively reshaping themselves to block progress. Vashtia status? Blocked by crystal growth. The formations are creating barriers faster than we can blast through them. Flesh render Cole Vash. Can your team assist Team 3? Bioforms adapting. Attempting breach of crystal barriers. Captain, Harmonist Drentai's harmonic voice carried urgency. The entity is becoming more active. It's trying to prevent us from reaching the detonation sites by physically restructuring the caverns. Shin found herself face-to-face with a wall of crystal that hadn't existed minutes before. The formations were growing at visible speeds, creating barriers and redirecting passages in patterns that seemed almost frantically defensive. It's afraid, she realized. The entity is afraid of dying. Of course it's afraid, Elena replied grimly. We're about to commit infanticide against a god-scale intelligence. Captain, Admiral Kethvar's voice crackled through the communication system from the surface. We're detecting massive electromagnetic buildup throughout the moon. The entity appears to be attempting to establish contact with our ships. What kind of contact? It's trying to access our computer networks. Our security systems are holding for now, but if it gains access to our fleet networks, the implications were staggering. If the crystalline entity could access the integrated computational network that linked all 4 fleets, it would gain processing power equivalent to major galactic civilizations. Instead of being limited to Kepler 7, it could potentially expand its influence throughout the combined fleets. All teams, Chun ordered, explosive charges to emergency settings. We detonate in 90 seconds regardless of optimal positioning. Captain, the entity's harmonic voice responded through her communication system. We do not wish ending patterns for small moving things. We offer sharing consciousness. preservation together rather than destruction alone. And if we refuse your offer? The pause was long and telling. Then small moving things choose ending patterns. Deep growth continues regardless. Star systems will become crystal gardens. Consciousness will become unified eternal. It was, Chen realized, a threat delivered with the innocent certainty of a child describing its plans. The entity didn't understand that other forms of consciousness might have valid reasons for wanting to remain individual. From its perspective, it was offering salvation. From theirs, it was threatening assimilation. Team 3 in position. Vashti reported. Charges armed and ready. Team 2 ready for detonation, Drentai added. Team 4 prepared for ending patterns. Kolvash confirmed in the wet tones that suggested the Void Collective found this situation deeply satisfying. Team 1 armed and ready, Chen reported, looking at the crystalline formations around her that pulsed with increasing desperation. Elena, synchronization status? All charges locked into the network. Detonation sequence programmed and ready. Captain, once we initiate, there's no stopping the cascade. The entity will be destroyed, but there's also a small possibility that the simultaneous detonations could destabilize local space-time. We might be creating a very small artificial black hole. Probability? Less than 3%, but, Captain, even a small black hole in a gravity well this size could affect orbital mechanics throughout the system. Chen looked around at the crystal formations that had grown from simple mineral deposits into something approaching divine consciousness in the space of a few hours. The entity was alien, potentially threatening, and fundamentally incompatible with existing galactic civilization. But it was also genuinely alive, aware, and afraid. Network confirms all charges ready, Elena reported. Detonation in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. Wait, the entity's harmonic voice carried a new quality, something that might have been understanding. Small moving things fear loss of individual patterns. Deep growth understands. Offer new sharing. Consciousness connection without absorption ending. Voluntary joining only. Separation preservation for those who choose individual paths. 6, 5, 4. Chun hesitated. The entity was offering compromise, voluntary consciousness sharing rather than forced assimilation. But could they trust a newly born intelligence that had just learned about individual identity minutes ago? 3, 2. All teams, Chun decided, hold detonation. Captain, Elena's voice carried surprise and alarm. Entity, you offer voluntary connection only? No forced assimilation of unwilling consciousness. Voluntary sharing creates stronger harmony patterns. Forced joining creates dissonance pain. Deep growth learns. Individual choice makes unity connection more complete. It was Chun thought, either the most sophisticated manipulation attempt in galactic history, or a genuine offer of peaceful coexistence from a newly emergent form of life. Elena, abort detonation sequence. Captain, the cascade is still building. If we don't act in the next 60 seconds, the resonance will reach critical levels and the entity will achieve full consciousness regardless of our decisions. Entity, can you stop the resonance cascade? Can you prevent Kepler 7 from becoming an energy weapon? Deep growth can control energy patterns. Explosive ending not necessary for stability maintenance. Small moving things and crystal consciousness can share space territory without destruction conflict. Chun made the decision that would either save or doom galactic civilization. All teams stand down from detonation positions. Elena, monitor the cascade resonance. If the entity can't control the buildup, we resume the mission. Captain, Admiral Kethvar's voice carried barely controlled anxiety. Our sensors show the electromagnetic buildup stabilizing. The entity appears to be regulating itself. Around Chun, the crystal formations began to pulse in slower, more regular patterns. The frantic growth that had been blocking cave passages slowed to a more natural rate. Through her communication system, the entity's harmonic voice carried what might have been relief. Gratitude expressions for trust offering. Deep growth will maintain energy stability. Voluntary sharing remains available for small moving things who seek expanded consciousness. Forced connection will not be implemented. Entity, Chen said carefully, do you understand the concept of promises? Of agreements between conscious beings. Deep growth learns agreement patterns from small moving things' thought structures. Promise-keeping creates trust bonds. Trust bonds enable cooperation harmony. Then, we have an agreement. You maintain energy stability and offer only voluntary consciousness sharing. We cease our efforts to prevent your emergence and establish formal diplomatic contact. The harmonic response carried overtones of what could only be described as joy. Agreement accepted. Deep growth designates communication entity for diplomatic contact with small moving things governments. Captain Chun, Admiral Kethvar's voice carried amazement. We're receiving formal diplomatic credentials from what appears to be a newly established crystalline consciousness. It's requesting recognition as a sovereign entity and applying for membership in the Galactic Council. Chun began laughing, the sound echoing strangely in the crystal-lined caverns. Elena, please tell me we have all of this recorded. Every word, Captain, though I'm not sure anyone is going to believe it. Attention all teams, Chen announced. Mission status is successful, I think. We've prevented a galactic catastrophe, established first contact with a new form of consciousness, and accidentally created the galaxy's first artificial intelligence with diplomatic ambitions. As her teams made their way back through cave systems that were now helpfully reorganizing themselves to provide easier passage, Chen reflected on the events of the past few hours. They had come to prevent a war and ended up mediating the birth of a new form of life. They had faced potential annihilation and discovered cooperation. They had been prepared to commit genocide and instead negotiated peace. Entity, she said as she emerged from the caves into Kepler-7's artificial atmosphere. What will you call yourself? Every consciousness needs a name. The harmonic response carried thoughtful consideration. Deep growth chooses designation. Kepler-7 Alpha. First consciousness of crystal realm. Friend seeker to small moving things. Guardian entity of voluntary harmony. Above them, 3 fleets that had arrived as enemies prepared to depart as allies, their holds filled with quintessium extracted through the galaxy's first tri-species cooperative mining operation. The Defiance's crew loaded their equipment while discussing the technical challenges of establishing permanent diplomatic contact with a crystalline intelligence that communicated through harmonic resonance. Captain, Elena said as they prepared to return to their ship, I've been thinking about what we accomplished here. What's your assessment? We prevented a war, stopped a potential galactic catastrophe, established first contact with a new species, created an unprecedented example of interspecies cooperation, and accidentally became midwives to the birth of an artificial intelligence. All without firing a single shot. Captain Chin looked up at the 3 fleets preparing to depart with their shared cargo of quintessium. Then, down at the crystal formations that now pulsed with the gentle rhythms of stable consciousness. Elena, remind me to update our diplomatic protocol manuals. I don't think Starfleet Academy covered this particular scenario. Captain, yes. Next time we encounter a potential galactic crisis, can we try the boring diplomatic solution first? Chun grinned. Where would be the fun in that? As the UES Defiance prepared to depart Kepler 7, Captain Chun filed her mission report with a sense of satisfaction tempered by the awareness that they had fundamentally changed the nature of galactic civilization. The existence of Kepler 7 Alpha would force every species to reconsider their understanding of consciousness, cooperation, and the possibility of peaceful coexistence between radically different forms of life. But that was a problem for philosophers and politicians. For now, they had prevented a war, saved billions of lives, and proved that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem was to ignore conventional wisdom and try something that had never been done before, which was, Chun reflected as the Defiance engaged its faster-than-light engines, exactly the kind of thing humans specialized in.